Okay, we're about to start the panel, the session for interference. First of all, welcome everyone at the 2023 Conference on Indonesian Foreign Policy. This is indeed a unique and perhaps the largest foreign policy conference in the world. Let me introduce myself. My name is Joseph Jakababa. I'm an assistant professor of international relations at Universitas Pelita Harapan. I'm happy to be here, and today I'll be serving as a moderator for this highly interesting panel, as it's designated as a session A5 for whatever reasons, where we are going to discuss and listen from all the esteemed panelists that were here on the topic of new forms of interference in international affairs, how to identify and respond to them. Before we begin our session, I would like to thank the organizer, FPCI, the Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, and all the generous sponsors that have made this event possible. And of course, congratulations and thank you to all of us, the esteemed speakers and the whole audience who are here and attending this conference. Before I introduce the panelists, allow me to give a brief introduction and context about our topic today, the new forms of interference in international affairs. In recent years, we have seen increasing involvement of non-state actors that exert interference to other nation states. For example, private security groups like Wagner Group in Ukraine, Blackwater in Iraq, and Silvercorp USA in Venezuela. These are some private security companies that are heavily involved in carrying out battlefield operations in conflicts or tensions that happen between states. Furthermore, the digital age that we are now living in is not only helping us to navigate our daily activities, whether for work, pleasure, or education, etc., but the digital era is also creating a realm where states and non-state actors alike use it in engaging in virtual battles of influence that may have global consequences. Digital technology and its various platforms are being used for manipulating narratives, creating and disseminating propaganda and disinformation. Digital realm became the place to influence and manipulate public opinion for the interest of spreading certain political views or to influence certain outcomes. These are the new types of interference that in recent years have taken shape. In addition with the traditional type of interference, such as sanctions, trade restrictions, and gunboat diplomacy. Today, we are fortunate to have a panel session with prominent speakers who will be discussing this important topic. The first speaker is Pak Dev Akbarsyah Fikarno, BA, a member of the Komisi 1 from the DPR RI. Pak Dev, if you can take the position up here. Thank you. The second speaker is Pak Denny Lesmana, over here. The Director for American and European Affairs, State Intelligence Agency, or BIN. Oh, welcome, Pak Denny. Happy to have you here. The third speaker is Excellency Ambassador Dian Waring Jurid, Ambassador of Indonesia to Iran and Turkmenistan from 2012 to 2016. Welcome, Pak Dian. Glad you can join us. The fourth speaker, Dr. Lin Kwok, Senior Fellow for Asia Pacific Security, Shangri-La Dialogue, International Institute for Strategic Studies. Welcome, Dr. Lin. It is our pleasure to have you here. And our final speaker is Mr. Mardigo Wawik Prasantyo, entrepreneur, content creator, expert staff, Indonesian Ministry of Defense from 2014 to 2019. Welcome, Pak Mardigo. Happy to have you here. Okay. Before we begin to our first round of discussion, let us watch a video remarks from Professor Omar Asur, Professor of Security and Military Studies, Doha Institute of Graduate Studies, and University of Exeter, Director of the Strategic Unit Center for Research and Policy Studies. You can play the video. Okay. Okay, I was just being informed that we're going to show the video at the end. Yeah, so we can proceed to our interesting speakers. Okay, all right. Before we begin our first round of moderated session, I was told and instructed by the organizers to give several hand-up questions for all our audience here. So for all audience, if you know the answer, please raise your hand and I'll give you a chance to answer some of these questions. Okay, first questions. Who's here knows about what is the Wagner Group? Please raise your hand. Wagner, okay. Would you please just stand up and then just speak. And introduce your name. Just,
should I stand up?
Sure. But briefly.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ardi. Oh, thank you. Test.
Okay.
Check. 1, 2. Hello.
It doesn't work. Okay, just speak.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ardi. So, Wagner Group, I think it's a private military company. People think, okay. It's a private military company that Vladimir Putin used to annex Ukraine. And now I think some regime using it to attack Israel in Palestine.
Okay.
Yeah, just
All right. Thank you. Please give a round of applause to our friend here. Okay, second hand up questions. Let's get it done. Blackwater Group. Who knows what is Blackwater Group?
Blackwater or BlackRock?
BlackRock or Blackwater? Blackwater in some other countries probably BlackRock, but here, I see a hand over there. Please just stand up and then just answer briefly.
I think Blackwater is the USA version of the Russian Wagner Group.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a private military company which can be hired.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Please give a round of applause. Okay. The third question is related with our topic today, the interference. Who feels that Indonesia has experienced foreign interference? No one feels interference. That's good. We're not being interfered. Excellent. Okay. No hands. All right. Moving on. Who knows about the new forms of interference? I mentioned it briefly in the introduction. No one is listening. Oh, I see. Okay, over there. I see a hand. Sorry, sometimes this light is too bright. I cannot see. Okay.
Sorry, could you repeat your question again?
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's a little bit
who knows about the new forms of interference?
In my own interpretation, probably it's not really new, and also it's not really old. It's like for example, subnational diplomacy, like created by several of the NGOs and government-owned NGOs. For example, like when the government sponsors several NGOs and they are using it to influence the course of politics in the other country. Like, for example, the famous one is United France by a particular country in Asia.
Okay. All right. Please give her an applause. Okay. Last questions. Who agrees that Indonesia should not ignore foreign interference? Hands. Oh, there's hands right there. Yes. Go ahead. Very briefly.
I think Indonesia shouldn't really ignore foreign interference because the very basic principle of sovereignty, we really need to protect our sovereignty in all and every means, and that includes non-traditional forms of foreign interference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Give a round of applause, everyone. Excellent comments. Okay, that's the hand-up sessions. So let us begin with our first round discussion. The question is for all of you esteemed speakers here, and let me remind you that each one of you have 5 minutes to respond and share your perspective to all the audience. The general question is as follows. In recent years, there appears to be a growing trend of increased foreign interference around the world. From your perspective, do you observe a discernible trend of greater foreign interference? And if so, What factors do you believe contribute to this trend? What are the new forms and tools of this interference and examples? And let me remind you again that we only have limited time for the session, so I would really appreciate that everyone try to respond within the 5 minutes time limit. The order of speakers is first. I would like to ask Dr. Lin to respond to this question. Go ahead, Dr. Lin.
Thank you very much, Yusuf, and thank you everyone in the room for your interest in this topic. I listened to the responses and I was actually very, I wouldn't say surprised, but I was very impressed by the levels of the answers in this room. So perhaps I have much to learn from you, and I look forward to our discussion to follow. In terms of the questions that you posed, I think we should take a step back perhaps I'd like to take a step back to make 2 points. First is an observation. I think in this part of the world there has been very little public work done on foreign interference, and by far the clearest work that has been done on this subject comes from the institute in Singapore, the RSIS, and I'd like to credit the authors for their work on foreign interference in the region, which I agree with in many respects and which I draw upon for this talk. The second point I'd like to make at the outset, before I respond to your questions, is a point on terminology. I think it's important to distinguish, for the sake of an analysis, the difference between foreign influence, which includes legitimate activities by governments, such as public diplomacy and foreign assistance, which are out in the open and transparent, on the one hand, and foreign interference, which would be a subset of foreign intervention. And this occurs when a foreign entity, whether it's a state or a non-state actor, takes covert actions to deliberately interfere with the policies and politics of the target state. And I think it's important to distinguish this, because otherwise almost everything will be foreign intervention or foreign, and this, when you talk about everything, you're really at the end talking about nothing, and it's very difficult to analyze. Of course, the distinction between legitimate foreign influence versus illegitimate foreign intervention is very unclear, and there are gray aspects in this respect, but I think analytically it's important to distinguish between the two categories. I think if we talk, for instance, so if we look at, for instance, China's Belt and Road initiative or its projects, which many foreign governments object to, I think this might be an instance of Chinese influence, increased Chinese influence, but I would not categorize them under an instance of Chinese foreign interference unless there are elements within them that are covert. So some examples of foreign interference that the RSIS report provides are, first, covert funding of politicians, political parties, business people, academics, etc. Covert funding of non-governmental organizations, and I think this was alluded to by the gentleman over there earlier. Covert funding of educational institutions. So, for instance, China set up various Confucius institutes. I think that's not covert funding. That is, very open funding. But there might be secretive funding of educational institutions, and therefore unknown influence within that organization. And of course, the covert funding of media. So that's one big group of things, funding that is non-transparent. A second category of foreign influence would be cyber attacks, and this can take several forms. One, you could tamper with a country's election results, and so of course there was concern about that in the US elections in 2020. Second, you have cyber attacks, which can erode or are targeted at eroding the confidence of their citizens. So, for instance, if you have a cyber attack to take down infrastructure, that erodes the confidence of the citizenry in the country. And the third group of foreign interference, category of foreign interference would be hostile information campaigns. And this can involve spreading disinformation on social media, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with that and are aware that you cannot believe everything you read on social media because some of it might be disinformation. And another instance of hostile information campaigns might not necessarily be disinformation in the sense that the facts are unclear, but what is untruthful about it is perhaps the extent of public outrage. So hostile information campaigns might seize upon certain fault lines within society, certain disagreements, and amplify it and suggest that it's much wider than commonly understood or thought, right? And so the question about the trends now in terms of greater foreign influence, I think we don't have quantitative data that I am aware of in terms of whether or not there has been an increase in foreign interference. However, if we look at it, I think that foreign interference has certainly become a more visible aspect of our politics in our societies. And for instance, the accusations of Russian interference in the 2022 US elections, and I think a lot of the foreign interference that we see nowadays is driven or propelled by increasing geopolitical competition between great powers, and these countries seek to sow discord and heighten fault lines within the target country. They seek to stoke protests, and we've seen some of that happen as well. They seek to undermine the target country's institutions, and the aggressor country may also, in some instances, seek to boost their own image, such as when they seek to boost their own image in terms of handling of COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'll stop there.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Dr. Lim. Please give a round of applause for Dr. Lisa Prawn. Okay. The next, I would like to ask Papa Dian Wirangjurit to give a response to the questions.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. I don't know, it is the rock. I remember Gordon Flake mentioned that this conference is like a combination of international seminar and rock concert. Are you rockers? Because if you are rockers, then this is the right place. Okay, thank you. Interference. I tend to agree to someone over there who said that interference is not a new concept. It is an old one. Even during the Greek era, there had been interference. Trojan horse, for example, if we are talking about military interference, it is a proof that interference has been with us throughout millennia. So once again, concerning the current meaning of interference, I tend to see in the advancement of technology, because now the interference can take different forms. You know what we call it, artificial intelligence, in the form of drones. It is also kind of interference because it can fly above our territory without our knowledge, without our awareness. It happens also, in my case, later on I will describe further, in the Middle East. Because today's technology can do what man domain in the past. Even they can interfere freely. The other form of interference, which is not also new, is bugging, tapping. It is well known in Indonesia, particularly in Jakarta, the capital. Communication between the two important strategic institutions has been bugged, has been tapped by foreign interference, so they can know what was discussed during this communication. So we are susceptible to interference. It is no doubt everywhere, even between the US and their allies, Israel. There had been also interference in their communication, in espionage. This gentleman will share with you about the work of intelligence espionage. So for me, Indonesia has been subject to foreign interference in also part of our history just after the end of the Cold War. You know, the rebel in 1948, communist rebel, it will not happen if there was no foreign interference. The one in 1965, it is very clear, it is also will not be possible without the support of foreign countries. So are we naive to say that we are now free from foreign interference? Yes. If you are naive, then you are rockers, because rockers does not know about this kind of things. Okay. They only do what make people happy. Okay. But interference in political terms could be a headache for the government, because we have to, I have been reminded, time's up, so we have to be careful about this all the times. Don't be naive in the foreign policy issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, rockers. Please give you a round of applause. Next, I would like to invite Pak Denny Usmana. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, moderator. Maybe I will not look at that way, so I will not know if the time is up.
I'll remind you, don't worry.
Maybe first about the interference. Foreign interference occurs when activities carried out by foreign powers or on behalf of foreign powers, maybe deceptive usually, and then even manipulative, and even on clandestine basis. On contrary to the national sovereignty, values, and also national interests. Why other countries try to interfere? Because of the concept of national interest. If related to national interest, country will do anything to secure and to protect national interest. And you know that interfere happened from very long time ago, but many of them were not proven. So because of that, if we know some of conspiracy theory, maybe some of them was interference, but because it couldn't be proven, so they said that, oh, it is conspiracy theory, Okay, and then growing, I'm very sure that now the interference is growing because as Pak Dubes Ambassador Dian said that because of the advancement of technology, not very easy. For example, if I would like to communicate with people from targeted countries, I can do easily and even maybe secretly, because it is protected, protected the communication between me with other, and also country will do everything to, if I told you, to protect and to secure the national interest, starting from coercive action or non-coercive action, from maybe open action until the clandestine action, even through the intelligence activities or operation, as long as country think that it should do that. So, for example, based on national interest, why some countries support Israel and other countries support Palestine? Because of their national interest. But I think very, very interesting, sometimes national interest doesn't mean that it is the will of people. For example, even sometimes the will of a ruler. So when the government change, sometimes the policy change. But when a government try to implement the policy, sometimes even their own people doesn't agree and support. For example, in European countries, although their government support Israel, but the people, most of them, they do not agree with the government, and they do mass demonstration everywhere about that. So I think very interesting for us to discuss about what kind of interference coming to our country. But frankly speaking, I couldn't disclose, I couldn't inform you, because it's part of our job, and I think in intelligence, area, it is confidential. So I think the first time I should say about this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Denny, for the remarks.
Perhaps among you there are some intelligence officer also.
All right. Thank you. This is a situation where if I have to tell you, I have to kill you. So, all right. Next, I would like to invite Pak Dave to give a response. Go ahead, Pak Dave.
Greetings, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the time to the committee that presented me the opportunity to speak, to the moderator, and to everyone that has assisted into hosting the event. It is a very sensitive issue to discuss, but it is a matter that we need to address and that needs to be explained publicly. The opportunity or the possibility, I suppose, of a foreign power intervention in Indonesian election is always there. But the thing is how can we as Indonesians and the Indonesian governments and all of its agencies and its apparatus is able to contain any possibilities of foreign interventions, whether it is government, foreign government, or foreign powers. Now, I have to say foreign powers is because it doesn't necessarily mean it's a government that intervene. It could be an institution such as Wagner, BlackRock, or Blackwater, or any kind of anyone that has interest to disrupt or lead the Indonesians' election into a specific ways. Now, how can they intervene? Yeah? Like a few years ago, when Trump won the election, it was strongly believed within the American communities that the voters were fraud. They were dismayed, I suppose, to reduce the votes for Hillary and to increase the votes for Trump's. The KPU was admitted that there was a breach of numbers of voters. The personal data that the KPU kept was somehow leaked out and was sold in the dark web. And now it lead on to that there is a possibility of such. Now, the Indonesians intelligence agency, the BSSN, the cybersecurities, the police, and then the election committee itself has confirmed that the data system is still insecure and is impenetrable, and so the elections digital system is still safe and secure to continue on to the election. But there is also a possibilities that there might be a huge foreign donors to a particular candidates to ensure their victories. There might be a strong media hoax to dissuade voters from certain candidates and to pushing them to another candidates. Now, I do believe that the Indonesians are mature enough to see through all this media hoax. But sometimes people, when they see headlines they receive in the WhatsApp group or in the social media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, they immediately believe it without actually reading to it or concurring to the news. It turns out to be a complete bogus, fake news. So it is part of my job as a member of parliament in the Commission 1 to keep persuading, to keep encouraging people to read into the news, not fall into the trap of fake news that would only create havoc in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Dave. Please give a round of applause for the response. And I would like to invite Pak Mardigu for the response for the general questions.
Thank you, Pak Yosef. Please repeat it again, the question, since I was the last guy. I forgot the question.
Sure. In recent years, there appears to be a growing trend of increased foreign interference around the world. From your perspective, do you observe a discernible trend of greater foreign interference? And if so, what factors do you believe contribute to this trend? What are the new forms and tools of this interference and examples?
Good, okay, thank you. I understand now the question. the interference is the soft word of intervention. So I think I prefer using a word of intervention instead of interference. So it's just a soft word. But I want to emphasize this, Pak Denny just said that every leaders or rulers come to become a leader in one country, they change the foreign policy. But there is one country from 1944, they never changed the foreign policy. The book called The Long Telegraph by George F. Kennan, the former ambassador of Russia, said that there are America, the population is 5.5% of the world population, and they keep 63% of the world wealth, and this is the word that very famous. We want to keep it that way forever. So you should understand that what America is the strongest superpower country, they never change what their foreign policy is. They want to keep it that way forever, the world wealth. More than 2/3 of the world wealth have to control by them. As we are now knows that the Wall Street is controlling 25% of the world of dollars, and the rest is out of America, and the rest is the government of America. So the world wealth still on the American side. You know, Alibaba, they're listing on the New York, right? Tencent, they're listing on the New York. So they never change their foreign policy, is they want to keep it forever, the world wealth. So now the world look like the years in 1900. The world now look like the years in 1900, where every country is on the tens. On the past 3 years, the increasing of the military budget more than 20% in every country. So we predicted we will go to world war in 2027 to 2037. There's just the military analytic. So we should, Indonesia, we should take position. We don't want to watch and to become just spectators. So we believe with this discussion today, we will have some idea what the country should do, should go for the next decade. I think that's from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Mardiko. Now we go to the second round of the discussion, where I give a specific question for each of the speakers. And question one is for Pak Dave. Yeah. Can you share any insights on interference that may have occurred in Indonesia? And I think all of us here are particularly interested in exploring the concept of interference related to the elections. Can you explain the various forms of interference in the context of elections?
I think the most obvious examples that we have experienced in Indonesia is, well, none of us was probably around back then, was in the 65 during the G30 SPKI. That's the most obvious foreign interference in Indonesian politics, I suppose. But it has occurred over and over again, but it's in a much more subtle way. From elections to elections, Indonesians have gone through during the New Order regime, although there is no clear indication or proof that there was a foreign intervention, but the election was strongly designed to favor certain political powers. Now Indonesian politics has become free and open. The democracy in Indonesia is probably an example to many other countries. So if you ask me the current examples of any possible intervention, is probably you can see it if there's a sudden spike attack or into a certain candidate, broadcastly spread out nationally or even internationally to attack a certain candidate. Now, so far in this election, at least so far in these elections, we haven't seen that spike just yet. But it doesn't mean that there won't be any foreign intervention in the future or within these elections. But I do believe that, again, I reiterate this, I do believe that the Indonesians are much more mature and much more aware of each candidate, what their standoff. And so I do believe that we can have a free and clear elections without any interventions from outside. And so we still hope for the best, and we just have to keep on spreading the good news and keep on socializing the concepts and what is our aim for the future, because Indonesia in the global world has become a model in a lot of things, such as how we managed to get out of COVID, how we managed to keep our economic growth stable, and how we managed to become a very friendly environment for foreign investors. And so we need to maintain that by keep creating an order of law, and also we managed to have a free society that everyone able to express their opinions without being threat of fear of being oppressed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Dev. Please give a round of applause for Pak Dev's response. Now, the second question is for Pak Denny. How do you perceive the role of intelligence in detecting and responding to these emerging forms of international interference? Additionally, are there specific strategies or collaborations that you find effective in navigating and addressing these evolving challenges?
Yeah, thank you very much for maybe the question. Yes, we know that many interference is very, very, I think, hidden. Yeah, it is not in clandestine style. So this the role of intelligence. You know that in Indonesia, many institutions have their own intelligence unit. Yeah, for example, the police and attorney office, even military, and also immigration. Yeah, many. They have their own. They have their own intelligence units, and State Intelligence Agency, based on regulation, become the coordinator for all intelligence units in Indonesia, and not only for intelligence units, but we have, I think, we can ask any information, any data from any institution in Indonesia. Regularly, there are the meetings of intelligence units from all offices in Indonesia to discuss every threat to Indonesia, and also we also have the cooperation with other countries. Intelligence, maybe like in Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we also have multilateral events for, I think, for the intelligence agency, like IIC, maybe IIC means Islamic Intelligence Service Community in ASEAN, in other countries. And we also have bilateral relations. So, exchange of information is part of our habit, yeah. And also we can also ask for the help from other intelligence unit. For example, if we think that there are intelligence activities in Indonesia from country A, for example, yeah, we can have communication and ask for help from intelligence agency from country B or C. But when we see that it seems that there are intelligence activities from country B, we ask from country A or country C, country D. Yeah, this very common, but it means that we, yeah, it is very, very I think very important. Yeah, our role, intelligence unit, to deal with the interference, and also that's why all country they will have the counterintelligence unit. Counterintelligence unit, all countries. So we not only deal with the intelligence activities, but all activities that become threat for Indonesia. And also we make communication with all, with all institutions and also international institutions, and even, for example, very easy, we try to educate all of the staff, the personnel, so they will know, the issue related to the, I think, newly intelligence operation. So all the personnel, they will be well equipped when, for example, they got one phenomena. So we'll know, oh, it seems it is come from blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So that's why, in principle, that the intelligence unit Indonesia, all in all level, we are ready, and we always try to the best to detect and give early warning about maybe if there is threat to Indonesia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Denny, for the remarks. Okay, the next question is for Pak Dian. Given your distinguished diplomatic tenure as the Indonesian ambassador to Iran and Turkmenistan from 2012 to 2016, we're especially keen on acquiring a nuanced comprehension in gaining a nuanced understanding of interferences in the Middle East with a specific focus on Iran. Could you share some insightful perspectives on the evolving nature of interference in the region over the years? What are the lessons learned during your tenure regarding the complexities and challenges associated with interfering in the Middle East? Go ahead, Pak.
Thank you, but I have to apologize. I need one day to discuss about this. Not enough 5 minutes, Before I speak, already time's up.
Iya. Baru mulai kok udah 3 menit gitu.
Please. So thank you very much. I'll try to be very, very, very brief. Okay. Please understand, as a diplomat, we need to not only to represent Indonesia, but also to try to learn something from the accredited countries that we are serving for Indonesia. In this case, Iran. Iran is the most, for me, the most heavily interfered country in the world. It has been subject to very heavy interference since the post-revolution in 1997. Up to now, what happened with these sanctions? What happened with these embargoes? Iran survived. Iran managed to develop itself into a leading producers of even armaments. Look at the fact, when, I believe you are aware also of this incident, when a drone of the US was down in Iran, it was not shot down. It was down by the technology. I mean, by using the radio, remote control. So the drone was down and it was intact. What happened with Iran? They display this in the open public space for people to see how the US interfere their country. And what happened next is within the next 1 year, when I was there, Iran managed to build its own drone. And now you can see the result of this development, progressive development of Iran to respond. This is to answer. To respond to the foreign interference, Iran managed to fly the drone above, for example, years ago, above the US carrier. Did you see the video about this? Iranian drone about the US carrier. That's very sensitive. How could it happen? Meaning, they have the software here in the mind of Iranian scientists. And now, you saw also the video, Iranian drone are used in Ukraine war. What happened with Indonesia? We have been subject to foreign interference also. But what we do, we bought used airplane, used fighter jets. In Iran, they still use the F-5, for example, but they dismantle it. They dismember the body of and now they have fighter jet, even though it is at the early stage. But how about us? We have been subject, you know, the story of the 60s when one of the planes dropping the weapons for the rebel in Moluccas was shot down in the 60s. Come on. It is now the 21st century. We are not been able to produce the yes, of course, with all due respect to the Dirgantara, we can produce, but to be honest, we only assemble because the machine is still from Spain. Not yet? Okay, terus. I'm afraid.
It's almost.
When I ask, then the time is up, you know. Very, very coincident, you know.
You should have
But
asked.
it's okay. It's okay. The conclusion is simple. How we adapt to foreign interference. We have to be able to come up with a concrete coordination among agencies. This is what we are lagging so far. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Fadian. And now the questions for Dr. Lin. Furthermore, are there specific instances or case studies that you believe exemplify the challenges and opportunities associated with international interference? How do we respond to the situation and possibilities?
I think as pointed out earlier, there are very many instances of foreign interference that we do not hear about. We just hear about the ones that make the media. So we heard about the Russian interference into the US elections in 2020. You know, we hear perhaps unconfirmed statements about some countries friendly towards Russia supporting the Russian narrative in the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And also we hear allegations from China that the US is interfering in Chinese foreign policy. So for instance, when the Philippines brought its case in the South China Sea against China in 2013, China alleged that it wasn't the Philippines behind the decision to bring the case at all, but the United States. And China also accuses the United States as being behind the Hong Kong protests over 2019 and 2020. So, you know, these are some of the more noteworthy instances of either actual or accused foreign interference. I think in terms of one that showcases or exemplifies some of the challenges that are faced, the Singapore experience is quite an interesting one because it showcases both the challenge to domestic policy and domestic social stability, as well as the challenge to foreign policy that foreign interference can pose. And so, for instance, Singapore was worried enough about foreign intervention to, in 2021, pass the Foreign Interference Countermeasures Act, which is called FICA for short in Singapore. And when he sought to explain the need for the law in Parliament, the Minister of Law and Home Affairs actually highlighted a French think tank's report, observing that Singapore had several characteristics that made it vulnerable to Chinese influence operations. And so I think the concern in Singapore is that given that it is a majority Chinese country, ethnic Chinese country, that much of China's narrative in respect of domestic policy or foreign policy might have sway within the populace, which might then put it at odds with the other minorities in Singapore, the Malays and the Indians. So there is a great concern about how foreign interference actually hurts or might hurt social cohesion within Singapore. But there's a second concern also relating around foreign policy, and that is when foreign countries actually come forward and push their narratives and how that might impact Singapore's foreign policy or its ability to conduct an independent foreign policy. So for instance, in the case of Russia's war in Ukraine, Singapore took a very strong stance and principled stance and said that this was an unlawful invasion of a sovereign country. And what happened later was that I think much of a significant or a vocal part of the population actually said, why is Singapore actually concerned about this issue? It has nothing to do with us. It's all the way over in Europe. It doesn't really impact us directly. And so, the government has also had to respond to these concerns as well. And so the question is, with increasing foreign interference, will we have governments, not just Singapore, but, Indonesia as well and other countries circumscribed in their foreign policy? And in terms of responses to or possible responses to foreign intervention, I think there are several possible ones. First, a country must draw red lines. It must tell other governments or state actors, what is acceptable interference and what is acceptable influence and what is unacceptable intervention. So passing legislation highlights that clearly. Second, it can create a general awareness of the prevalence of foreign intervention. So it's not only about elections, and we shouldn't only be worried about intervention during the election period, but broader, the more general times as well, when there are foreign wars, like wars in the Middle East, etc. Are we being all subject to foreign interference in terms of narratives around the issue? And finally, education. It starts young. Okay. It starts very young, and to teach our school children about the need for critical analysis is very important, so that they grow up with a habit of critical analysis. When they see something that looks fishy, it probably is. And so I think this conference plays a very important role in educating us, me as a scholar, but also the general public, and very importantly, the youth as well. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lin, for the response. No questions, five to Pak Marigo. I'll deliver it in bahasa Indonesia and also bahasa Inggris. Sekarang dan ke depan, apakah intervensi asing secara global akan meningkat? Apa buktinya dan apa penyebabnya? Negara-negara apa yang disinyalir akan melakukan intervensi terhadap negara lain? How do you anticipate the rise in foreign interference on a global scale? What evidence or indicators support the projections? And what underlying factors contribute to the potential increase? And are there specific countries that you suspect might incline to engage in interference against other nations?
Thank you, Pak. After you said in Bahasa, I more understand about the question, since I have to transfer to Javanese first and then to Indonesian and then to English. So, saya ini mimpi masih bahasa Jawa soalnya. When I dream, I'm still using Javanese language on my dream. So I have to translate into Bahasa, go to Indonesia and go to English. So thank you for the question. I understand, I very understand, and I try to pick the answer with Bahasa Indonesia. Please understand my language. Teman-teman, bahwa kita tahu dari 193 negara di dunia ini, 37 negara saat ini dipimpin oleh pemimpin yang otoritarian. Dan pemimpin yang otoritarian itu cenderung melakukan intervensi. Dan kebetulan kita tahu ada yang namanya global power ini, ada negara super power, ada negara middle power seperti Indonesia, ada negara yang no power, bahkan ada negara yang fail state, gitu ya. Nah, negara-negara yang melakukan intervensi ke negara lain, kebanyakan pemimpinnya otoritarian. Jadi kita saat ini bisa lihat, we can see that Xi Jinping, Erdogan, Putin, MBS, Muhammad bin Salman, itu semua adalah pemimpin-pemimpin otoritarian yang mengintervensi, termasuk Korea Utara gitu ya. Jadi gampang lihat negara yang mengintervensi. Negara demokrasi, democratic country, they will never interfere other country, except America. So, jadi ke depan, apakah Indonesia berubah menjadi authoritarian country? Dan sebenarnya ada cara untuk membuat kita menjadi the strongest country in the world, karena sekedar mengingatkan, Indonesia used to be the strongest country in Southern Hemisphere. In 1955 to 1965, Indonesia is the strongest country in Southern Hemispheres. So at that time, we have a strong foreign diplomacy. And what we will suggest to the government of Indonesia later on in 2024 to 2029 is using our most powerful power. As 300 years ago, we are very strong with the spice road atau jalan rempah. And the next, I believe, Indonesia will be the strongest country by using the mineral road. We have all the mineral in the world needs. You know, we have 95% of daily sunrise in a year. We also have rain and water in 85% of our territory, and we have tectonic and volcanic. To make the mineral below the earth of Indonesia is the most powerful weapon to make Indonesia great.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Mardigo. And for all speakers today to sharing their thoughts. Okay, now we are in a Q&A session where I will invite the audience to ask questions. How many minutes we have? 10? What? 15? Okay, 15 minutes. Yes, please remind me later. Okay, again, did I see a hand? Anyone? Okay, I see one over there. Let's collect like 3 people first. One, the gentleman over there, one over here, and one over here. Okay, this is the first round. Okay, go ahead. Committee, please help with the microphone, probably to the gentleman over there. Yes, go ahead. Please introduce yourself first.
My name is Refa. I'm coming from Past Labs. This question is for Ms. Lin. So, considering about you mentioned about the Singapore's measure to tackle the foreign interference in their domestic level, for example, like FICA, and also to an extent POFMA as well, it creates a ripple, negative ripples in the domestic audience of Singapore, and also those ripples also exploited by certain state actors and also propagated several like bad remarks in, for example, in the newspaper. I think you know about it, about the Xiaopao newspaper, which is a Chinese language newspaper, which really trending amongst the Chinese people in Singapore. To what extent that the prognosis or the cure for the foreign interference is really helpful to the cause, because to an extent that the cure is really harming towards the democracy within the country, and also because the POFMA and FICA is criticized by many activists within the country.
Okay. Yeah, please. Please make your questions brief. I think that should be. I think we got the essence of it. Okay. Oh, yeah, please. Yeah, please make it brief. Thanks.
I have a question for Mr. Mardigo about financial interference. The United States has been banning Russia and Iran from the SWIFT payment system, so they can't use the US dollar. And they can also do capital outflow from countries that are using the US dollar as their reserve and cause massive chaos. So the question is, how safe is Indonesia from that kind of interference? And one more thing, can we take pictures together?
Okay. Yeah, that's why we'll call rockers, yeah? All right, one more questions from the gentleman over there. Then after this, I'll let the speakers to respond. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Hello, my name is Afradiva. I'm from Bandung. Basically, this question forward for Pak Dave and Pak Mardigo. If Indonesia today become a target interference or intervention, why Indonesia didn't become a sniper tomorrow, next week, or maybe next year, based on nation interest, nation needs, world needs, and deep consideration of our constitutional Undang-Undang Dasar 1945 and experience of phenomenon Indonesia in overseas or international. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll let the speakers to respond. I think Dr. Lin, you have the first opportunity.
Thank you very much for your excellent question. On FICA and POFMA. I had a look at the wording of FICA, the Foreign Intervention and Countermeasures Act, Foreign Intervention Countermeasures Act, some time ago. And yes, I agree with you, the wording is quite broad. So in other words, what it can do is not just catch illegitimate foreign intervention, but also legitimate domestic opposition. And the Singapore government has sought to give assurances that the powers under the Act would not be exercised in an unduly expansive way. However, I think the preference, of course, would not be to rely on the goodwill of the government, but more on cleaner drafting and tighter wording within the legislation. So I think there is scope for perhaps a more disciplined wording in legislation such as FICA.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lim. Pak Mardigu.
Thank you, Mas. So we believe that the embargo will never work. That Trump once said to Biden, "You will fail to embargo the Russia, because Iran has been more than 15 years being embargoed by America. They never fail." So the program of embargo other country, it will never succeed, never. And by using the transaction, now yuan is become the second strongest currency in the world. So yuan become the competitor of the alternative and competitor of the dollars. So I believe the Indonesia also, we have to change our dollar transaction to our own currencies. I guess it answers your question.
Okay, thank you. I think the response to the other questions, I think Pak Dave, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
First of all, I would like to thank you, Pak Dino, for having us here. He called me one time for 20 seconds, and I agree. So that's all it takes. So what was the question again? Why haven't we joined IPA? Or?
If Indonesia today become a target of intervention, how we become the sniper, not the target?
The sniper, not the target. Okay. How? Well, look. Well, first of all, international forums such as IPA, IPU, UN, all these international agencies, it's a communicating body. Yeah. The main point of having this and being a part of this organization is to maintain an open dialogue with everyone in the world. In this current world order, I suppose, there will always be the opposition sides. Since the inceptions of the form of governments, there's always two sides of everything. That is how we come about to having World War I, World War II, and conflicts, global conflicts throughout the world. But having part of this, being a part of these agencies, being able to communicate to everyone in the world will lessen our chance, or will lessen our chance of becoming the target. So by having an open dialogue with everyone, we're trying to comprehend whatever everyone's interests and trying to meet halfway will always be an opportunity for us to become friendly to the world. And that is concurrent with our national ideologies and our foreign policy. One enemy is too many, 1,000 friends is too few. So in order to being friendly with everyone, being friendly to China, to Russia, to US, even to Iran, even though we don't acknowledge the existence of Israel, but we still maintain certain levels of communications with several organizations that are linked to the state of Israel. We're still able to maintain a dialogue, and therefore we can push the interests, not just our national interest, but global interests, to creating peace and pushing the diplomacy in order to reach a certain level of goals and certain understanding. So how can we become the hunter or not the target is by being friends with everyone. Therefore, we are not being seen as a threat to anyone, but rather as a friend to everyone.
Okay, thank you, Padre. Okay.
Please pay attention. Padino is over there. Padino, your time is up.
Padilla is being a great timekeeper. Do we still have enough time for question? Okay. Okay, do you see a hand? Anyone wants to ask more questions? Okay, there's one. I want to see a female asking questions. Okay, we have one over there, but not female, of course. But is there any female want to ask questions? No. Okay, let's get that one gentleman over there, and then I see a hand over. Okay, there's one over there in the back. Okay, I think that should be enough, like two people. Go ahead over there.
Yeah, can I speak in Indonesia?
Yeah, sure.
Since Indonesia has become a language in PBB, right? So nama saya Doris Kokainama, bisa panggil Riko. Saya dari Ambon. Pertanyaan saya terkait dengan international new forms of interventions, terutama untuk Pak Denny dan juga Pak Mardigu. Apa ancaman terbesar Indonesia yang akan datang dari luar di masa mendatang? Itu pertanyaan yang pertama untuk kedua pembicara. Kemudian pertanyaan yang kedua, karena saya dari daerah Indonesia Timur and there are some separatist movement in Indonesia, right? Especially in Maluku and Papua. Apakah dua separatist movement ini, especially in Papua, can be used in the future as a threat for Indonesians unity probably? Nah, itu pertanyaan saya gitu. Dan kalaupun bisa jadi ancaman, bagaimana kita merespon itu gitu in order to avoid Indonesia to, chaos. Terima kasih.
All right, thank you. Okay, one last question over there from the gentleman behind. Okay, go ahead.
My question is for Dr. Lin. In your opening statement, you mentioned that there is an importance we must make, especially in making the distinction between foreign interferences, the legitimate one and the illegitimate one. And so my question becomes, would a pro-foreign government lobby be considered a foreign interference? And if it is it considered an illegitimate one, or is it a legitimate one? And it's mostly based on John Mersheimer's book, which is the Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to have Pak Denny to respond, and then after that Pak Mardigu and then Dr. Lin.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe in bahasa or in English, in bahasa maybe, yeah? Okay, regarding I will answer about the separatism, especially in Papua and Maluku. You know that the separatism, both Papua and Maluku, I think nothing now. Why? Because there is a single meeting in UN table the issue of Papua, except just in VFII, United Nations Permanent Forum for Indigenous Issues. But in other UN forum, it will not be discussed. But sometimes there are several parties try to hijack For example, in SMU PBB, UNGA, from other countries, raised the issue of West Papua. And in the Dewan HAM, Human Council, some institution or some countries raised the West Papuan issue. While the, I think like Papua and Maluku RMS, they join UNPO. People sometimes mix UN because there is UN, but UNPO is unrepresented nation and people organization, not part of UN. So I think in the international I think in the fora, nobody support West Papua except just 1 or 2 or 3 countries. Why? Now, this is because interference. You know that the main problem that the new form of interference is through the internet. Yeah, they try to convince people to win hearts and mind of people by publishing many articles, fake articles. Yeah, so for example, in the Southwest Pacific, there are several governments previously supported West Papua. Why? Because they just read the information from internet. Why did they change the opinion? Very easy. We just invited them to come to Papua and saw directly with their very own eyes about what really happened in Papua. After they visit Papua, they will change. They will change their minds. So I think the last time in 2023, during UNGA, not a single country raised the West Papua issue. Previously, several countries always raised the issue, but once again, because they didn't know about what really happened there. Even they don't know that Papua got the autonomous status now, yeah. So I think that's what happened. But sometimes, again, I think in cyber war, we still lose. Because, for example, if we type West Papua, it is very, very normal, I think, press, but more than 70 from 100 articles, very, very negative about Indonesia. So, for example, if person from Argentines, when they see what is West Papua, they will be hating Indonesia from other countries. Thank you very much.
Okay, Pak Denny, thank you. Pak Mardigo, real quick.
Pertanyaannya tadi apa, Mas? Kepanjangan gue. Yes.
Ancaman terbesar Indonesia. Oh, maaf. Pertanyaan saya yang pertama tentang ancaman terbesar Indonesia, terutama dalam intervensi dari luar, ke depannya gimana? Dan yang kedua, apakah gerakan separatis di bagian Indonesia Timur bisa dipakai oleh negara-negara lain untuk intervensi di dalam Indonesia gitu? Thank you, Pak.
Oke. Saya rasa saya menggunakan bahasa Indonesia aja biar cepat, karena pertanyaan udah dijawab Pak Denny tadi. Dia udah lebih dari 10 tahun kali di dunia BIN dan memang khusus bagian itu. Jadi memang kita kalah di diplomasi. Jadi sebenarnya dia tidak punya kekuatan di darat. Kita cuma kalah diplomasi. Lebih dari berapa di BIN kita mencatat ada lebih dari 700 media itu memprovokasi Indonesia, menjelek-jelekan Indonesia, dan kelemahan kami di BIN adalah kekurangan data untuk mengcounter berita-berita itu. Jadi sebenarnya berita itu cuma kalah berita saja. Jadi kita tahu bahwa intervensi itu dilakukan oleh negara-negara asing, sponsor-sponsor asing yang ingin membuat Indonesia memang selalu goyang. Jadi saya pikir ke depan lebih dari sisi kita untuk menghandle informasi tadi. Jadi mungkin kita harus membuat sebuah program di mana ke depan Indonesia Timur, kita tahu ada 7 provinsi Indonesia yang satu rumpun gitu ya. Kita harus, itu adalah saudara kita semua yang saat ini masih left out. Jadi saya pikir ke depan dunia intelijen harus lebih giat lagi untuk menolong Indonesia Timur mempromosikan dan mengcounter semua berita negatif dari luar. Itu semua dari luar. Kita confirm itu semua dari luar. Terima kasih pertanyaannya.
Oke, Pak Mardigo. Dr. Lin.
Thanks so much for the question, which was to remind the audience about the pro-foreign government lobbies and whether that might be considered legitimate influence or illegitimate intervention. I think under the definition that I highlighted earlier from the RSIS report, I think this, given that it's overt, so if the activities are overt, then I think we should consider it as foreign influence as opposed to foreign intervention. That said, well, we can say that all foreign intervention is illegitimate. I don't think it necessarily follows that all foreign influence is legitimate, right? Not all foreign influence is in a country's interests. So, for instance, if we look at the influence that China might wield over a country through the Belt and Road Initiative, I think in some cases some of the influence might be productive and beneficial to a country, and in some cases it might allow China to wield certain non-beneficial interests, influence over a particular country. And I think Singapore anticipated this and the ability of different diasporic groups to influence national interests from the very early days when it sought to forge a very strong national identity that wasn't based on the individual ethnic groups within Singapore, and I think Indonesia has sought to do the same as well through forging a strong Indonesian identity. So I think, while we can state, just to reiterate, while we can state that foreign intervention is illegitimate, is done covertly, we don't know about it, it's non-transparent. I think we also have to be careful about foreign influence. Not all of it is bad, but some of it can be bad if it goes against your national interests.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lim, for the remarks. Before we end our session, I was being informed that we have video remarks from Professor Omar Asur, Professor of Security and Military Studies, Doha Institute for Graduate Studies and University of Exeter, Director for Strategic Unit. Go ahead.
Different types of interference, really. The first type that saw the rise in the aftermath of the Cold War and the 1991 Gulf War was the cyber operations, which is quite significant in terms of attacking the critical infrastructure, electoral systems. So this is in peacetime, but also in wartime, as we saw in Ukraine, attacking some significant military command and control structures, air defense, communication systems, radars, and others. But also there is another type of operations that has been, or forms of interference that has been on the rise, such as information operations. Information operations, we are talking famously about the 3 Ps, the propaganda, which is an info op affecting the public opinion, and the public opinion affecting politics. Politics here meaning the decision makers specifically. So we're talking about spreading rumors, fake news via social media, manipulations of influencers. So all sort of attempts to impact the public opinion, and connectivity, urbanization, and the widespread tools of influence facilitate that further. We also, if we talked about the third type, is psychological operations, and psychological operations well connected with cyber and info as well. I was in a visit in Kramatorsk in 2016, and it was interesting that we had a long queue Add to that the intelligence operations. Intelligence operations, and it was really a breakthroughs in technology. So human intelligence, HumanNet is still very important, if not the most important. But also you will have major developments in SIGINT, in signals intelligence, imagery and geospatial intelligence, and also measurement and signature intelligence, MASINET. And of course, the one that has been very, very important, probably competing with human intelligence, is open source intelligence, OSINET. Intelligence breakthroughs really can be weaponized as one of the tools of influence to interfere in international and national affairs. We have also the consistent trend of weaponizing peaceful action. So giving passports by one state in a smaller other state is not really an act of war, but it could be weaponized. And we saw that in Georgia in 2008. Building seas. Building islands in the middle of the sea and therefore changing the maritime borders. That's also not an act of war, but it has implications in terms of maritime territorial integrity of states. Stealing opponents' intellectual and real property rights. It's also not an act of war, but it's a form of weaponizing and influencing peaceful action in a destructive way. We also have probably the most critical bit, in my opinion, of one of the most important tools and ways of hybrid warfare, which is the interference via sub-state actors, especially armed sub-state actors. And we see the phenomenon from Colombia in the west all the way to Afghanistan and more eastwards. That includes countries such as Syria, such as Ukraine, and partly what's happening as well in Gaza. So the idea here is simple. The idea is deniability of the state via using a militarily capable sub-state organization, armed non-state actor, who are increasingly breaking the monopoly of the state over the means of violence, and therefore their victories are increasing. We know from the stats that we have in the 19th century, if a state faces a non-state force, a militia or insurgent force, others, the state has 90% chance of defeating the non-state force. In post-1976 until 2020, that has changed. That 90% of the 19th century dropped to about 24%, which means that the state can militarily defeat the non-state in about a quarter of the cases that we have in this period, in this time frame. But it does not mean that the state loses, but the state needs to negotiate. And if the non-state force is sponsored by another state, then it will have to give some concessions to that state, that sponsorship state. That's also very clear in Ukraine since 2014, when there was a large degree Russian-led forces, non-state forces in the Donbass, and also in Crimea, although to a lesser extent. But also elsewhere, from Syria to Lebanon, to Yemen, to other areas in the world as well. And that it has to be made clear that the types of alliances are not equal. So not all alliances are not born equal, but you have tactical ones, quite pragmatic ones. You have more ideological ones that take different levels. A long-term and short-term. The degree of the non-state autonomy from the sponsor is also very important to understand. So it is not an equal forms of alliances. But if we took all this as a whole, we can conclude with the following: the hybrid warfare as a form of interference in international affairs is a very effective way of fighting. It provides deniability. Its costs are relatively minimum. We have the case of Crimea 2014, which was one of the most important geostrategic regions of Ukraine that was taken, occupied, and then annexed with one loss. One militiaman on the pro-Russian side was killed, and that's about it. When Russia attempted a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, we are talking now, the number of casualties is exceeding 300,000 between dead, wounded, POW, and others. So, in that perspective, the costs are quite significant. So we will probably see a continuation of this type of warfare. It's cheap, effective, less costly, deniability is possible, and therefore responsibilities and impunity is likely. And at the same time, the development of this type of warfare, because of the technological advancement, is heading forward. It's not a very optimistic note, but it places a lot of responsibilities on diplomats to find more and more ways to reach either compromises or hopefully peaceful settlements, so that the world can avoid both types of warfare: conventional, hybrid, and also irregular. I will stop here. I thank you very much again for the kind invitation, and I hope to see you next time in Jakarta. Take care.
Okay, thank you. That was Professor Omar. And now let me close the session. Thank you again for all speakers, Dr. Lin, Pak Dian, Pak Denny, Pak Dev, and Pak Mardigu, for such wonderful and very insightful thoughts and ideas that all of you have shared on the issue of new forms of interference. I'm very sure we are all learned something from the wonderful important insights from our speakers. And remember, do not believe everything that is on the internet, especially the social media. Always practice critical thinking, question the information, and please remain active in increasing your digital literacy. My name is Joseph Jagababa. On behalf of the organizer, I would like to thank all the audience, and especially our speakers in the panel. Let's give another round of applause. Thank you. And now, souvenirs given for the speakers and from the organizers, and of course, a photo session. Okay, how are we going to do this? Yang ngasih siapa? Oh, saya ngasih. Oke.